Tuesday Teatime. Coming together, letting the sound of the bell bring us into this present moment. Finding ourselves beginning to settle in one position and notice what's going on around us. Notice what's happening inside of us. Taking this time to settle into our comfortable yet upright, if possible, position in a familiar seat, chair, floor. As the Buddha indicated, finding a comfortable position at the foot of a tree. Or if you were lucky in those days, in a little kuti in the forest. Well, we can have great appreciation for the fact that we sit in the comfort of our homes, that all of those who have gone before us, sanghas for generations who have passed the teachings of the Buddha down to us. Now we have the privilege of being in a country that we can be comfortable in a place that isn't disrupted by very much around us. But the commonality of all of us as human beings is what happens in the mind and what happens in the body. That we have pleasure and pain, we have ups and downs, we notice heat and cold and roughness and smoothness. The Buddha established the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and we start with the mindfulness of the body. And that includes the sense doors of hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, smelling. And the Buddha included the door of thought, the mind, the door of the mind. Whatever comes to us through these sense doors. And I think as Westerners, we tend to be very mind-oriented. And so it helps at first to find a single object to use as our anchor to let our attention go to, which we've spoken about plenty before as the breath at the nostrils, or the breath at the belly, or a touch point, where the buttocks is seated on the cushion or chair, where we might find our arms touching. to help contain, to help allow the mind to be slightly tamed. Training, it's a training. And the mind does what it does. It's one of the sense doors, and it does a lot of thinking, which is fine. It's very useful for us. But we discover when we settle down a little that we are not our thoughts. We begin to see the impermanent nature of whatever is happening in the mind, or at any of the other sense doors. That whatever our attention is called to, we stay with it. We attend to it. We hold it gently. And we might notice that it arises due to certain conditions, stays for a certain amount of time, and then passes due to its own condition on its own accord. And so we can settle back into this spaciousness of the breath and the body. Our body on the cushion, our feet on the floor. Grounded in the somatic experience of being in the body. Holding ourselves with gentleness and kindness. Using our breath to return to if we get lost, can't remember what we're doing. If we get lost in the hindrances of grasping at something that we wish would stay longer, or pushing something away that we don't like. Maybe there's sleepiness. Another of the hindrances is doubt, and there's one of restlessness and agitation. With mindfulness being recognized and encouraged, and awareness being present, we can be open to what's arising without having judgment about it, and just noticing that we really can't grasp onto it. And so it has no sense of solid sense of self. We can rest in this awareness of things rising and passing away, rising and passing away. But with our attention, we don't just space out, because mindfulness and insight wants to develop seeing clearly what's happening. Seeing clearly usually means trying to attend to the beginning, middle, and end of each object that our attention is going to have awareness be with that object until the object dissipates on its own. And we do that over and over again, stringing together moments of wakefulness, moments of mindfulness. And that's what we do over and over again. Being kind and gentle with ourselves if we get lost in thoughts for long periods of time, whether it's a thought happening in the mind or maybe a sensation happening in the body. Our attention can go to it if we have something particularly painful happening. Sometimes we can be with it for a little while and then we move away from that object as our attention. If it works well when there's intense sensation in the body to touch upon it. But if it's very hard to remove ourselves from the pain of it, we can spread out our attention and sometimes go to something further away that we can attend to so that it doesn't get a hold of our mind and take us into too much of a tailspin. So we can rest in this open awareness, being aware of what happens at any of the sense doors. And we can return to the breath of the nostrils or feeling the pressure of the diaphragm when we find ourselves lost and we want to begin again. What we might notice as our body relaxes a little more and our mind perhaps becomes a little more calm, we can notice various aspects of what we might perceive as suffering. I like this quote from Joseph Goldstein. The wonderful paradox about the truth of suffering is that the more we open to it and understand it, the lighter and freer our mind becomes. Our mind becomes more spacious, more open, and happier as we move past our avoidance and denial to see what is true. We become less driven by compulsive desires and addictions because we see clearly the nature of things as they are. So no matter what we find our mind state in, we approach it, we look at it, we hold it. We don't run away from it. Lately, I've been noticing when I tend to have aversion to what's happening in the mind, and so I go towards something that might be more pleasant, like eating a cookie or drinking some tea or something. But what I really see is that the mind is complaining and grumpy. And if I bring the mind in closer to really notice the object that is arising, then what we're seeing clearly, what I see clearly as I bring the mind in closer to what's happening, I can notice that it's arising, and then what happens? Can I see it disappear? So this is this level of interest and effort that we hold what arises in. And we might find as soon as we are actually looking at something that appears to be uncomfortable, all that effort and that complaining and all the other chatter in the mind, we can see it disappear. This clear knowing, clear seeing. Can bring continued confidence in the practice. And so we develop both insight and tranquility. This practice of tranquility, this deepening of concentration, even if it's using just the breath, the mind becomes developed. And that helps us let go of or abandon passions that we might cling to. And then on the other hand, the other balancing of tranquility is insight. And with insight, discernment is developed. And when discernment is developed, then ignorance is abandoned. We are present with what's happening. We see it clearly. So we balance this. Throughout our practice, we might be developing tranquility or samatha with the breath deepening and our concentration improving to a spacious, relaxed, open spaciousness. And we balance that with interest and insight to see the true nature of whatever's in our span of attention as arising and passing away. And so we have the two wings of the Dharma there. Concentration and insight. And it's amazing how with insight each moment can lead to the next with interest. In my example of my grumpy mind, then desire arises for it not to be that way. And if desire arises because of a particular object, in this case it's noticing craving happening that I don't want to be, I don't want the mind state to be this way anymore. We stop observing the object. It's not the Dhamma object anymore. It's an object of desire. And so the object we want to watch in a situation like that is desire itself. So we let go of the object and we look at the attitude of the mind. What is the attitude of the mind right now? And so we can have moment-to-moment mindfulness, moment-to-moment mindful awareness, as long as we have enough interest and confidence to continue investigating, holding ourselves with ease and just being with what arises and noticing what's happening in the heart and mind right now. Breath by breath, we return again to the present moment, being aware of what's happening now. We may notice that it's pleasant or unpleasant. Maybe it's neutral. Maybe there's some grasping that's happening, some craving that's happening, wanting something to stay the way it is or be different than it is. Just letting whatever arises arise and pass away with our attention. We can delight in the stilling of thinking, cultivating skillful activity in the mind. Perhaps noticing that thinking has maybe lessened or our attachment to it. We may notice constant letting go of our attachments to views and opinions that arise and keep us tightly focused on something. As Sayadaw U Tejaniya says, don't fight with craving. Don't say I shouldn't have craving. Instead, focus on your awareness of the craving. We could say something like, never mind if I still have craving. At least I see it now. I might not be able to handle it completely yet, but I can learn something from it. That's what we're doing, keeping the mind stream alert, awake, and aware of what's happening. When do we find ourselves clinging? What do we notice happens in the mind when there's craving and clinging? And remembering that there is a way free from this suffering that happens through the Noble Eightfold Path. And right now we're practicing mindfulness, which is on the Noble Eightfold Path. Mindful of what's happening now, holding ourselves kindly. Slowly cutting away the roots of craving. So we notice our own awareness, the endless ways to be attentive and awakened to our own being, accepting whatever arises with the clarity of attention, without liking or disliking, letting go of grasping and simply being open. Letting that openness hold ourselves in great kindness and in compassion when things are difficult for us. May I be at ease. May I have happiness and the causes of happiness, as some of the phrases are in the meta-phrases of loving kindness. Still a concentration practice. Now we're concentrating on the feeling in the body or the words or phrases that work for us to hold ourselves in kindness and easefulness. And as we develop this sense of goodwill for ourselves, no matter what's happening, may the spaciousness in our hearts and mind include others. Good friends, benefactor, someone that we've learned from. Whoever comes to mind, maybe one person at a time, or one being at a time if it happens to be an animal. Realizing that this being wishes to be happy, just as I wish to be happy. Holding this being in my heart, that they be at ease. Hold themselves in kindness and compassion when there's difficulty in their lives. And letting this heartfelt energy expand to others, someone we may not know. May they be free from harm and have ease and well-being. May they hold themselves gently, having goodwill for themselves. This neutral person wishes to be happy, just as I wish to be happy. We step outside of our me and mine and I story and include others that we don't know, who also wish to be happy. May we hold in our hearts this sense of free from harm and compassion. And may we let this inclination of our hearts and minds open to the heart as wide as the world. In whatever way we do that, you don't really even have to feel it. It's a state of being that is endless and unconditional. Whether we know it or feel it or not, we can hold others in kindness, in goodwill. and strengthen that same feeling for ourselves as we include others that we don't know, near and far away, to the north and the east, to the south and to the west of us. All beings, seen and unseen, known and unknown. Those that swim and fly, crawl and walk. Thousands of legged creatures, creatures with wings, those that swim, those way below the earth's surface, that even live in the dark, those way above the earth's surface. Those beings in joy and those beings suffering. Those that are known and unknown, seen and unseen, those enlightened and those unenlightened beings. May all beings everywhere have happiness and the causes of happiness. Anicca vata sankara upadavaya domino upakitawa meruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence. They arise and pass away. And seeing this clearly, taking this time for meditation, seeing clearly the arising and passing away of all conditioned things that come to our senses, to our sense doors. They all arise and pass away due to conditions. And seeing this clearly with mindfulness, clear seeing, brings the greatest happiness. And that happiness is peace, our true peace. Thank you for your practice. May it bring you joy. May you know that it brings others joy inadvertently. That the merit of our practice, no matter what it's like, is of great benefit to others. It's hard to believe that sometimes, but the very fact that we're sitting on the cushion or in the chair doing this practice, taking this time out right now, is of so much benefit to us, and others receive that benefit.